welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're looking at a really harrowing event out of the Texas Hill Country, a holiday weekend that just turned into an absolute nightmare.
Yeah, the human cost was just devastating. We're talking at least 78, maybe 80 people who lost their lives.
Including 28 children, and initially, I think over 40 people were reported missing. Just staggering numbers.
Absolutely.
So in this deep dive, we want to get past just the headlines. We want to really understand, the mix of things, the geography, the specific weather, and some critical failures in the warning systems that all came together.
Exactly. We've looked at the original accounts, the news coverage, some really gripping stories from survivors. The goal here is to pull out those key lessons.
Right. Not just what happened, but why it matters, especially for you listening maybe in communities that could face similar risks.
Understanding those takeaways is crucial.
So let's start with the sheer impact. It's almost hard to wrap your head around. The sources describe homes just ripped off their foundation.
Cars lodged way up in trees.
Entire communities just gone, wiped out. There was a specific story about Camp Mystic, a well-loved girls' summer camp.
Yeah, I saw that. Bunk beds torn apart.
And they found a girl's sandal something like 15 feet above the ground.
15 feet. It just speaks to the power of that water. And the survivor accounts, they are chillin'.
Yeah.
There was one young camper, she actually put a name tag on herself, just in case, in case she was swept away.
Oh, wow. That's heartbreaking.
It really is. And another little girl escaping through a window into water that was already neck high, she said, I don't know how we made it.
And families clinging to trees.
For an hour and a half, 2 hours sometimes, in
Yeah.
the pitch dark. And the speed of it all.
That's the thing, right? The speed.
The Guadalupe River in one spot jumped 26 feet in only 45 minutes.
45 minutes. Incredible.
And another river nearby up more than 20 feet in under 2 hours. Just walls of water.
Okay, so that's the horror of it. But let's unpack the why. What made this happen? You mentioned the geography, the Texas Hill Country itself.
Right. It's famously called Flash Flood Alley for a reason.
Why is that? What makes it so prone?
Well, it's the rock underneath. It's limestone bedrock, very hard, but also porous, kind of like Swiss cheese in places.
Okay.
But crucially, it doesn't soak up water like soil or a sponge would. It's more like a hard, tilted surface. So when heavy rain hits...
It just runs off immediately.
Exactly. It funnels straight into the canyons and riverbeds incredibly fast, creates these really destructive flash floods.
So the ground itself is primed for disaster.
Yeah.
And then there was this specific weather event on top of it.
There was. Meteorologists identified something called a mesoscale convective vortex.
Okay, what does that mean in simple terms?
Think of it like a small spinning weather system. It effectively sucked up huge amounts of moisture from the Gulf of Mexico.
Like a vacuum.
Sort of, yeah. And then just dumped it inland, almost like aiming a fire hose at one specific area.
Wow.
This caused what they call training thunderstorms. Imagine one storm after another rolling over the exact same spot.
Just relentless rain.
Absolutely relentless. We're talking about 1.8 trillion gallons of rain.
That number is hard to even comprehend.
It's like 4 months worth of typical rain falling in just one night. It wasn't just heavy rain. It was something else entirely. It really showed the limits of predicting these kinds of extreme, fast-developing events.
And wasn't there a connection to a tropical storm, too?
Yeah, that's right. The remnants of Tropical Storm Barry were also in the mix, helping to sort of fuel the whole system, adding more moisture, more instability.
So you've got the vulnerable landscape, this bizarrely intense weather vortex fueled by a tropical storm. But then there's the human side, the warnings. What went wrong there?
Well, this is a really critical part and where a lot of the criticism lies. The National Weather Service, their initial forecast was for maybe 3 to 5 inches of rain.
Not 10, not 18 inches that actually fell in places.
Exactly. So for the people on the ground, the survivors, the overwhelming feeling was no one saw this coming.
The warnings just didn't get there in time.
Or they came hours too late. Or, tragically, after the worst had already hit. There's one account of a survivor getting the severe flood warning alert on their phone while they were already clinging to something in rising water.
Oh my God. That's
all. And remember, a lot of this happened overnight. People woke up to water pouring into their homes with absolutely no warning.
And the sources mentioned. This wasn't the first time, right? A similar flood back in '87?
Yes, disturbingly similar. Same river, children involved, similar issues with warnings. It does make you ask if we're learning the lessons.
There was some defense from the NWS union, wasn't there? about staffing and systems.
Yeah, they pointed to things like staff shortages, maybe outdated technology, and issues in the pipeline, getting the warning from the forecast office to the people potentially in danger quickly enough.
So amidst all this failure and devastation, what about the response? The search and rescue.
It was massive, a huge effort. Over 850 people were rescued. You had volunteers, state crews, local, federal, the Coast Guard using helicopters, drones searching. Initially, it was very much a rescue mission, holding out hope.
And just regular people helping each other out too, I imagine.
Absolutely. That community spirit really shone through. Neighbors checking on neighbors, churches opening their doors as shelters, as places to gather. That was vital.
A real lifeline.
Definitely. But there's also a concern you see in the accounts that once the immediate crisis fades, these communities might kind of get forgotten.
Lost in the shuffle of recovery efforts and policy discussions down the line.
Right. Will the focus stay long enough to make real changes and provide sustained support? That's a big question.
So wrapping this up,
Mm.
what's the big takeaway here? This deep dive really underscores that terrible human cost when nature's power meets failures in how we prepare and communicate.
Yeah, the sheer speed of it all, but also the incredible bravery, the resilience of people.
It leaves you thinking, though.
Definitely. If the forecast the day before is only calling for minor flooding, and the real alerts arrive after homes are being swept away, what does it actually take to be ready for something truly unimaginable?
How do we make sure that communities in places like Flash Flood Alley aren't just facing the same risks again and again without enough warning?
And what can we all learn from those who survived, relying on their own strength and the support of their neighbors? It's a sobering question.